The first show the Intellectuals ever played was at one of these Newbridge Rec Night shows. Rec Night was this thing on like Thursdays. They would have local bands play. You could play basketball. And they'd be like juice and cookies. I guess it was try to, you know, one of those keep kids from taking drugs by giving them something to do things. And we were like 13, maybe some of us had turned 14, but you know, we were kids. And we didn't really know how to play. We had been practicing, and we kind of had the structure of a few songs, but it was real bad.
You can't even call them songs. They were entities of noise contained kind of in the pop format as far as time length, but you know, there was no structure at all.
Hey, oh, let's go. Hey, oh, let's go. Hey, oh, let's go. Hey, oh, let's go.
We borrowed amplifiers. We made Dave Saldarelli the manager that night because he had a microphone and we needed a microphone. So we said, you can be the manager if we can use your microphone.
I think my brother had a microphone, but I think what they really made me manager for was that I stood in the back and watched the door to make sure that nobody snuck in.
He brought over his mic, and if you look at the pictures, he's standing in the corner the whole time like this, like he's actually doing something. And we played, and people actually clapped, although when you listen to the tape, you can't imagine why.
At the time, I thought it was the greatest thing I was doing, you know, but look, you know, when I hear tapes of it or we talk about it, it was probably one of the most bizarre things you would ever see.
It was unabashedly fuck you, more so than just about anything that, you know, I've seen or done, definitely that I've ever done. It was pretty much a fuck you, because we couldn't play our instruments and we expected people to come, and people were dancing. I don't know. I don't know what they were dancing to drum beat wise, but yeah, they were dancing. So that was the first show, and my last show with the Intellectuals.
I want everybody heard about the bird.
For some reason, Jim wasn't singing. I don't know why, if they asked me to sing, but I don't think that I would have said, okay, well, screw Jim and I'm singing, but I also don't think that Jim would say, I don't want to sing.
It wasn't like they were like, you know, anybody was mad at Jim or we didn't want him to do it. It was just, Kev was so good, we were like, what do we need another guy for?
We still hung out every day. It was no, like, bad blood or anything. It's important to get like people like, you know, like Ronald and like Jimmy Coletti and Bobby and people who really honestly opened a lot of people's eyes to seeing that there could, you know, that you can play music and get up there and not. And granted, I mean, I never saw Justified Violence before I would join the Intellectuals or whatever, but, you know, I just want to give, you know, props to at least people who, you know, who definitely stuck their neck out a little bit, you know, when there was no venues to play on the island, when, you know, it's kind of the first wave of Bellmore.
Hi, this one's dedicated to Crazy Eddie and Bob Caldarelli, two men from hell.
When I was younger and started, you know, getting into, you know, hardcore and that kind of stuff, there weren't a lot of us that liked it. You know, me and Dave Jamott, Ron, and Mike Bianco, and a few other people who who really liked it originally. And then I guess as we got a little bit older, I saw a lot of people who were friends with my brother also starting to like it. Guys who were a couple of years younger than we were, that when we started getting into it, they were still in elementary school, but then by the time they'd gotten into junior high school, they started liking it too, which I always thought was really cool. Was more people that liked it, and they seemed to be more accepted than we were.
I guess we were rubbing off in some way. I don't know if we were rubbing off, or they probably just went through their own natural progression also. But they had a little more of an understanding of it because there were other people that they could talk to about it that had kind of went through it and showed them where, oh, you can get records here, you can get this, The more people that are into something, the more they talk about it, so the more open you can get to the subject. So I guess that, in a sense, that's what made it easier for them, whether we rubbed off, whether they saw us and thought that they wanted to do like what we were doing, or if they followed their own natural path to the same place that we had been. Whichever, but the more people that are into something, the easier it is to open that world up. It wasn't until later years now that I think the whole kind of scene melded together where, like, once it got into the bars where everyone, once you're over a certain age, everyone's the same age, it seems like, so it doesn't matter. But back then they were younger than us, they were Bobby's little brother's friends. So, and Joe Kolar, he lived down the block from him, since I was little, so.
Thank you very much.
Justified Violence are, for what I consider to be the first of the Bellmore punk rock hardcore bands. Ron Bianco, Bob Saldarelli, Coletti. I'm not sure who played bass in that. Probably Eddie, I don't know. But I can remember just like thinking it was the coolest thing in the world that A, Bob had a Stratocaster, B, he had a Marshall amplifier, and C, he spray painted the Justified Violence symbol on his garbage cans. So like his dad would take those old metal garbage cans out, and it would say Justified Violence. That was it. I had to have a band, all Bob Saldarelli and JV.
I guess it originally started with me and Jim, the drummer. He was also into hardcore and punk, and he said that he played drums. He found out I played guitar.
When I first went to the school, see some kid with a circle jerk shirt. First I thought it was a girl, because he had this haircut. It came like a bouffant. I don't know what it was. He said he played guitar, so I said, all right, come over to my house, let's jam.
I kind of figured that he would suck, but he got behind the drums, and he was the greatest thing that I ever heard before. 2
weeks, about 4 practices that we did before we started writing our own songs, and that's how Justified Violence started.
And then we were looking for a singer, and Ron was our close friend who didn't play an instrument, so we had him sing.
We were the Justified Violence kids, we were, the Boys Town Choir we were known as. We were like the youngest kids on the scene at the time. I mean, there were others, but I think we were a band before we even started playing,
Mostly it centered around clubs in Manhattan, downtown, like CBGB's. They used to have hardcore matinees every Saturday.
In that whole scene, you had to be in a band or you were nothing. Everybody was in a band.
And just by getting to know people who went every week, becoming friends with them, we got to play with their bands.
There's little skinheads out there.
It was one of our first shows at CB's, and I think it was with Cause for Alarm and the Psychos.
It was the greatest thing ever. It was just a great show. We played, but the thing is, the band was on the verge of everyone hating each other. Jim had joined the Agnostic Front already. They were getting ready to leave on tour like a couple of days later. We knew the band was over. Me and Jim ate mescaline just before we went on. So, 2 songs into it, we were tripping out, and about 3 songs into it, I did the old stage dive with no one there.
From what I recall, somebody kind of caught his back legs, but his front went down, slammed his face on the ground.
There was always this nail, CBGB, sticking up out of the floor. Everybody knew about it. It was there for years. It's probably still there. And Ronnie cut his nose on it. Right here, big scar you got.
It was a real Sid Vicious. I had blood all over my face. It was the beginning of the set. We kept playing through the whole thing.
And then took Ron to the hospital.
You know, I had to go get stitches, tripping out in the emergency room. It was quite a night, quite a night. But I made it back to the show in time to see the Psychos play the last couple of songs. Went out, did some dancing with my face all bandaged up and shit. It was great. Everyone was like, stop him, stop him.